Knowledge box, my name is Alex, nice to meet you. Not short for Alexander, as some people may think, which means I wasn't named after Alexander Graham Bell or Alexander Pope. Nay, I was named after I was born, when the midwife said to my father, "Alex sounds nice." Regardless of how unromantically we're given our names, most of us employ the same ones that our parents give us when we're born for the entirety of our lives. Not that we can't change them, a lot of people don't know this, but if you want to legally change your name, at least here in the UK, all you have to do is, start using a new name. It's that simple. There's no form to sign or hand to shake. Or of course, if you're feeling less adventurous, you can just give yourself a nickname. How does Owl sound? So given that names can be so insignificantly handed out, changed and adapted, they can't possibly play a significant role in shaping our lives, can they? Well, as it turns out, research suggests that even such a seemingly trivial label as your name can have a quantifiable effect on how successful you'll be. Seriously. Nominative determinism is a term that was coined in a New Scientist magazine article in 1994. It's a theory that people may be influenced as to which career path they choose by their name. How? Well, naturally it doesn't work for everybody, but there are some people that have names that lend themselves quite nicely to a certain job. For instance, meet Sarah Blizzard, a weather presenter for East Midlands Today. Or how about this chef named Tom Kitchen? Or here's my favourite, Dr. Richard Chop, which can be shortened to Dick Chop, a doctor who specialises in vasectomies. These examples are pretty cool, but they're also pretty rare. Let's look at some more significant evidence of the influence of names. In 2011, a New York University study concluded that people with names that are easier to pronounce, like John or Sarah, are more likely to have higher status jobs than people with more difficult to pronounce names. I'm not making this up. In fact, other studies have shown that employers may subconsciously favour certain job applicants based upon the familiarity or even the whiteness or blackness of their names. It's pretty troubling, and it's actually for the same reasons that, believe it or not, companies with familiar and pronounceable names actually tend to perform better in the stock market. Let's travel 4,698 miles southeast of the Big Apple to Ghana, specifically the southern Ashanti region. Here live the aptly named Ashanti people, many of whom, in accordance with their tradition, believe that every Ashanti child is designated a spiritual name which is in accordance with the day of the week upon which they were born. As psychologist Richard Wiseman mentions in his book Quirkology, Ashanti children born on a Monday and a Wednesday are traditionally referred to as Kwadwo and Kwaku, respectively. Those born on a Monday are supposedly destined to live much more reserved and peaceful lives, whereas those born on a Wednesday are expected to be much more troublesome and rebellious. Understandably skeptical, in the 1950s, psychologist Gustav Jehovah decided to conduct a study and attempt to quantifiably measure the relationship between an Ashanti child's name and their nature. What he found was that when he examined the juvenile court records in Ashanti to see who was getting in trouble with the local authorities, was that there were significantly more Kwakus and significantly less Kwadwos in the records. And this clearly supported the people's beliefs in a relationship between a person's date of birth and their personality. So does this mean that somebody's character and future can really be determined by their birthday? No, not exactly. To see why, let's look at a slightly more familiar area of study: astrology. Not too dissimilar from the Ashanti people, astrologers believe that the position of celestial bodies during someone's birth can affect their lives. I'm an Aries, which means that, according to PsychicGuild.com, my life pursuit is the thrill of the moment, and my secret desire is to lead the way for others. If you want to find out yours, I'll leave a link in the description. One man not looked too fondly upon by astrologers, regardless of his star sign, is Hans Eysenck, a German-born 20th century psychologist. The reason for this is that Hans is known for having conducted studies which revealed something pretty incredible. When Hans administered his now famous personality test to just over 2,000 astrology students, he found that their personalities amazingly matched up perfectly with what their star signs would suggest. This seemed like an incredible astrological breakthrough, but don't get too excited. Hans couldn't quite accept that the study was representative of the general public, and so in a later study he administered the same tests to a sample of people who weren't studying astrology. And here's the vital difference. He included a question asking for their familiarity with it. What he found was astonishing. Remarkably, the people who were familiar with and believed in astrology, and therefore knew what the characteristics of their personalities were supposed to be, matched their star signs just as well as the people in the previous tests. However, and this is where things get really interesting, people who weren't as knowledgeable about astrology didn't match their star signs at all. The conclusion that Eysenck drew was that people were subconsciously adapting their personalities because of what they believed they were supposed to be like. This same explanation can be given for why Kwakus are so prominent in the Ashanti juvenile court records. It's pretty intuitive to imagine the effects that our names might have on our lives, but they're not the only labels that we're familiar with, and they're not always quite as obvious as names. If you're currently in, or can remember, school, I'm pretty sure you'll be familiar with the idea that many teachers, whether purposefully or not, seem to give that little bit more time and attention to the clever students. I suppose you can't blame them, because naturally teachers will want the students with the most potential to do as well as they can. But could you imagine a world in which it worked the other way, where students were more clever because of the extra time and attention? Well, you don't have to. In 1968, Rosenthal and Jacobson conducted a now famous study in which they administered IQ tests to students in a California elementary school. They then completely arbitrarily picked about 20% of the students and told the teachers at the school that these students performed exceptionally well and so were expected to perform better in class, despite them having actually performed no better than their peers in the test. After a while, the students were made to complete a second IQ test, and despite the fact that the students who were made known to the teachers as having special potential were chosen completely at random, first and second graders from within this group actually performed significantly better in the second test. This was and is an astonishing result which caused Rosenthal and Jacobson to conclude that if teachers expected certain students to perform better in class, they may subconsciously favour their needs in the classroom over those of their peers. And of course this would cause those students to have an unfair advantage and ultimately be more successful in school. This is a remarkably similar result to that of Eysenck's astrological studies, in that people are being subconsciously influenced as to the way that they behave by their expectations. Another area that might not be as black and white as you'd expect is, well, blackness and whiteness. Race. In a study conducted at Stanford University, a group of white college students was shown an image of a face. Now the important thing is that this face was presented without colour. It had no apparent ethnicity, it was racially ambiguous and could just as easily belong to a black person as a white person. Despite this, the face was labelled by the researchers, with 50% of the students being told that the face was black and 50% being told that it was white. After having seen the picture for a little while, they were asked to draw the face as accurately as they could, with the best representation winning a $20 prize. Unbelievably, despite both groups having seen the exact same face, the students who were told that the face was black exaggerated black stereotypes when recreating the image. And of course vice versa, with the students who were told that the face was white drawing more stereotypically white features. These simple monosyllabic words were enough to change the students' visual perceptions of a person's face. And I think it goes without saying that this can be easily shown to be representative of the way that perceptions are created not just of someone's appearance, but of their character too. But what does it all mean? I mean, it's not like the fair-minded of us actively base our opinions of people based upon their labels. But, well, that's just the point. We subconsciously make decisions about how we view people based upon their names, age, skin colour and more, without even realising it. And if these decisions are so deeply ingrained in us, is there anything we can really do about it? Well, let's face it, these labels do seem to be able to shape the way our lives will play out. But don't get too disheartened. Think about it. We can't possibly know whether someone born with an unflattering label or an unfamiliar name is destined to never be successful, or if instead it's society's wanting understanding of what these labels suggest that causes such a person to feel as though they're destined to fail. That is to say that, regardless of whether this data about labels works in your favour or not, there are always exceptions, anomalies, outliers. Just because you have flattering labels doesn't mean that everything will necessarily come easy. And just because you don't, doesn't mean that you can't be somebody. Some labels are pretty hurtful: failure, stupid, ugly. But when faced with these labels, there's a choice to be made. We can let them define us, as they have done for so long, like the data suggests, or we can be the exceptions, the anomalies, and the outliers. If there are enough anomalies in any data, well then they cease to be anomalies altogether. They become the norm. Simple words which we use to categorise human beings can lose their stigma and become as benign as they so obviously should be. Those are the options, and the choice, well, it belongs to you. And as long as this video doesn't completely bomb, I'll see you in the next one.